This is Pattern Practice. Picture-in-picture closed and maintained. Hi guys, welcome. I guess Mike's busy. He's a busy guy. He actually on the Pattern Practice account declined the event as Pattern Practice. So that was funny. He didn't on his personal. He was like, Pattern Practice is not going to be there. Good luck, fellas. But we are indeed here. With me, I have Levi from before and G from before. So go watch all of our episodes to catch up on who these people are. And one thing I wanted to talk about, though, I mean, we can go anywhere, but one thing I definitely wanted to get at was talking to executives, and that probably has a whole bunch of word cloud stuff around it as a topic. So, G, you linked a few interesting resources. The last one I actually found, I don't know about the most interesting, but it like hit the quickest. And Levi, for context, it was he linked the Substack that was like, oh, why do we keep hiring jerks for leaders? And then this guy turned into a jerk. And really what it's about is, their communication style demands a different character as you go up. And I mean, there are jerks out there, but like they can't all be jerks. It's got to just be a valid communication style at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I also think that direct and disagreeable communication has an aspect to it that the opposite doesn't. So, like if I was just telling you stuff to flatter you because I didn't want to upset you, then I could be honest or dishonest and you wouldn't know. But if I'm saying something that makes me look bad, then I would have to be being honest or playing like 4D chess or something.
What do you think, G?
Yeah, I I think that article that I read today, which is paid content, that was from a former Amazon director of engineering, and they started out like as a software engineer, moved into line management, and then gradually rose. And when they were in earlier in their career, they thought the executives were basically jerks. But as they became more senior and got more busy and realized the cost of the lack of clarity, that is what drove them to this very clear and direct communication style where, yeah, it's going to piss some people off, but there's no misconstrual possible.
What is the cost of lack of clarity?
I mean, huge waste of resources and opportunities. You're going after the wrong things. You're doing you're just wasting money, wasting time. You're not going after the highest value work. And from the perspective of performance management, you're not giving people clear signals that they're doing the wrong things or how they need to improve. If you don't want to tell them, here's where you're screwing up and here's how you can be better, because you don't want to have those hard conversations, then they're going to keep floundering, and that's going to be bad for them and bad for the company.
Okay. And it's interesting too. Like I was so I like many also have a manager, right, that manages me. I and I've moved to a different one since, but one thing I really liked about it that I think is kind of revealed in some of that specific that Amazon reference article you referenced was he opened this meeting with, all right, guys, tell me what matters. And I was like, oh, like it changed me. Like this question changed me. It's like, tell me what matters. Oh my God. You don't care at all about the technical specifics of how we achieved this outcome. And it's not even that you're like uncaring or a jerk, but it has nothing to do with your responsibilities, the means by which we achieved this, as long as it was compliant. Right? Oh my God. Oh, I am wasting your time if I say anything you don't ask for, you know? And it's not even like I'm better than you, you're wasting my time, it's not worth me hearing. It's like it literally there's an opportunity cost to it. And just all of these implications of tell me what matters, no matter who says that to you, in their role, it tells you everything about, well, it doesn't tell you everything. It's orienting about who you're talking to, what your audience is, why are you even talking in the first place? Like, that was just big for me. Tell me what matters was big for me. And I tried not to be a kiss ass about it to him, but I told him I loved it. I was like, I love that. Okay. It's like, I love that, boss. Good job. Good job on your words in the meeting. Tell me what matters.
What's hard is you and your boss have a there's not a big level difference between you, right? By definition, you're one level removed. Maybe you're reporting to someone at a couple levels off because the org needs to have some hygiene done, but you're pretty close, and there's a periodicity. You're meeting regularly, so you've got a relationship. So you get to know each other. You know what it means when they say, "Tell me what matters." You talk to somebody else. Let's say you're talking to some executive who's several levels above your boss, and that you
Let's
talk to them
say,
frequently. They say, "Tell me what matters." You have no. I mean, they're from another planet. You have no idea the kinds of things that they're worried about and that you think matter. Like stuff that matters to your boss might not matter to them. Stuff that matters to your grand boss might not matter.
dude, I'm in an org. My organization has 27,000 people in it, and it's me, my boss, my grand boss, his great grand boss, I think his boss, and then my great grand boss is in charge. Okay, how do you even talk to someone like that? And I really do mean that, because like I do have occasion to speak to someone like that. What are they thinking? What's useful? Have you ever spoken to someone, either of you? Have you ever spoken to someone at that level? And I mean, maybe at that level is one question, and at that size of an org is a different, because a gigantic enterprise 3 times great grand boss differs, of course, from a CXO at a startup. Although they might have, similar functions, you might be extremely specialized at the enterprise level where you're literally nothing but strategic. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think the largest organization I've ever worked in has been about less than 10,000 people. Um, so there's never been that many levels between me and someone, but I do find the higher up someone is, the more, well, first, I mean, they have to be like kind of a good operator to get to that level, right? So they're gonna at least pay lip service to caring about what you care about to some extent, as long as there's some Venn diagram with what they care about. So I think that's a big aspect of it. But also, yeah, it's just if it's not like, I mean, without knowing like what the company's goals are, you have no idea how to align your interests with theirs, I would think.
The company's goals,
That's
which I
a that's
I should know, right? Well, go ahead,
that's
G.
that's a great orientation. Like, yeah, what does your company publish? Do they have OKRs, KPIs, GBQs? Like,
OMG, LOL. I have a couple. We of course have all hands. They have, of course, detailed in beautiful PowerPoint slides exactly what our goals are, and then well, I couldn't tell them to you. Something about de-risking, that seems important. That actually I could probably do a pretty good job explaining what it is to de-risk technology. Probably some kind of compliance, right? Security, that might also just be de-risking. Some kind of, and like, what's the bottom line too? Because like I have like my business unit goals, fulfilling the like global enterprise strategy. Like I don't, and I was even telling my immediate manager, my new immediate manager, he was like, oh, you know let me lay out the year for you. Here's what we want out of this year. And I was like, ooh, uh what? Can I get that slide or whatever? He's like, no, it's easy. It's these things. And I'm like, yeah, it's easy, but like I couldn't possibly say the words you just said. I don't know if anyone else has this talent, but I don't know if I could repeat the words you just said. If you were to quiz me, well, I don't know what our plan is. And so he literally, and I printed it out, and I have his goals for the year on my desk. Okay, so I at least know what we're doing, and I'd love to collect them all. and have like just in front of me like what is the damn plan for the immediate future. What is y'all's experience with uh, understanding and attending to beyond the first week after having heard of it, a period of renewal every what month? How do you keep aligned, with the goals or the OKRs or whatever? Are you watching the needle move? Are you like, yeah, we got, we're one more closer? Like what does that really look like? Because I just kind of do my work and try hard, and it's been working out so far. But like, I don't, I do want to be able to talk to people in the executive capacity.
Yeah, I mean, by the time it filters down to you, those top level OKRs may not be so relevant. But if you're talking to them on their turf, hopefully they are at least doing work that's like in line with those top level strategic goals, and presumably they were in the room where they were getting hashed out. So like I think it's probably more useful for you to understand where they're coming from than the other way around. I mean, maybe ideally in like an effective OKR system, there'll be some really high level OKR at the top, and then that ladders down all the way through the org so that you've got your own or maybe your bosses or your grand bosses OKRs within your mini org, and those should be fulfilling some piece of the larger OKR. I'm not sure if you've got that, but I was suggesting to go after the OKR like at the highest level of the company, because if you're talking to like a CXO, that's presumably how they're oriented.
Yeah. So, like in my organization, the one thing they say every all hands is we're striving to be a rule of 40 business, right? And you can Google what that means. But for our particular organization, and probably most SaaS companies, you make most of your revenue on renewals because you can't, with software you don't have to resell every customer all the time, right? So new business is a small percentage of revenue compared to renewals. So everything that is a risk to renewals is a much bigger deal than new business. New business is obviously a big deal, but something risking renewals is a bigger deal. And so if I'm talking to um, an executive at my company, I frame my concerns as like what either could decrease our costs to keep our customers, thus increasing the profit margin of every existing customer, or what reduces the risk that customers will churn. So you have things like that, where, like, if I'm talking to a CXO about like why does this matter, it's like, well, it matters because we're either getting our lunch eaten by a competitor and that stops that, or we've reduced our costs going forward. Um, So, I'm not an executive, but like example, some of my directs, we have to improve performance of a tool we have. And we were trying to figure it out whether the obvious solution of just pay Amazon more money would actually do that. But it's not clear that it would, because it's like not clear what percentage of it is CPU bound and which is, got other issues. So we did a pilot program to increase the resources of the servers we use. Um, Now they're agreeable. So I wasn't like in the nitty gritty of how they did their benchmarking, right? And so they sent out this PDF, and I was like the only person involved who was like, I'm struggling to read this PDF. Like, what are you trying to say here? And they were like, well, we did see a performance increase of, extra resources, but in the environment we were using, it had limited resource capacity compared to production. And there was this long back and forth. And eventually I got to the meat of the issue was they didn't test it on bigger servers than production servers. They tested it on bigger servers than staging servers. So essentially they just wasted a bunch of time and money. But they were hesitant to tell me that and included a bunch of details. But if I were an exec, the more higher up I am, the less I'm concerned about their methodology was wrong. And it's like, just tell me what the conclusion was. We eventually got there. The conclusion was we need to run the test again and pay Amazon yet more money so that we can verify that there will be a performance increase from spending more on compute. Um, Once we know the difference in the performance for the compute, we can balance like how much that's going to increase our operating costs versus lowering churn risk. So then I can take that to my bosses of like, it's going to cost us X many dollars a month. And in theory, will reduce our churn risk by some predictable amount.
Levi, what was it? You used a term earlier and you said you could look it up. Was that reducing churn risk or was it something else?
No, it's a rule of 40 business. Has something to do with EBITDA and
Hmm. Okay.
other things.
Rule of 40 business. Companies' combined revenue, growth rate, and profit margin should equal or exceed 40%. Okay. All right. That's a rule of 40 for, I guess, SaaS, apparently.
Yeah, that
Okay.
sounds right.
SaaS formula. Good to know. Going to write that down. Going to start a
I
SaaS business.
I just Google it every time I need to tie in what I'm thinking to tell, a level executive, I go re-Google that and then plug in my thoughts to why does this matter to this number they care about.
I mean, the way you're saying it sounds like it's like a fudge, but the actual words and transcript I feel would show as being like a highly competent impact mapping. Like which is it? Like is it useful? Like is it actually useful? Does it help
Well,
you orient
so
your work to actually have to be challenged to make that association?
imagine yourself where over half your week for years on end is spent in the abstract trying to figure out how to make this number correct for your board. And you have no idea how the business works at a granular level. When someone comes in, they don't want to hear about the Amazon bill. That's like, whatever, we just pay Amazon. Tell me how to plug in what you're saying to this thing I have to have meetings about all the time. And it's like, oh, now I know where it goes on my Excel sheet, so I understand what we're talking about. You're talking about this row on the spreadsheet I look at all the time. Yes, if we made that row go down, that would be good.
But like, does it help? Go ahead, G. Go ahead, G. You look
Well, I
like you
like
had
that.
a.
I like that model for. It's a good model in the abstract for being able to talk to an executive. Like they care so little about the detail of your world. Really, you're just like an input on one cell of a spreadsheet. And so, like, take whatever you're going to tell them, take it and make it of the proper form that compiles to their spreadsheet. That's really
Dude,
all they need. Like anything else is
I love it.
extraneous. Now,
Yeah, they
let's
don't
say
want to
that.
know how it funnels into the spreadsheet. Just tell them which cell goes up or down.
Yeah, they definitely don't want like a Shaggy Dog story of, oh, we have these servers and those servers. And now that's different if you're like in a quick meeting with an executive and they're, whatever they're doing, an OKR check versus like, I don't know, maybe I've been in a situation where like suddenly I found myself spending extended time with an executive.
Oh
Um,
man.
so in this case, it was a a visit to a customer together with my CEO that I hadn't really spent any time with, and it was over a few days. So that's a different thing. This was a much smaller company than an enterprise company. So like just to call two people as CEO, it's really a different job when you're managing 150 people versus 27,000 people.
Well, how did it go? I mean, did you quickly learn their language? By what means did you find your words to become useful with this person? Like, you know, how do you avoid wasting the time of someone at that level
So that's a
for
great
that
question.
extended a period? Because you can waste their time in half an hour, but if you're there for like a session, you know, like how did you survive?
Well, I was lucky, I think, in that my CEO was super cool. He's just like a cool, interesting dude. It used to be, was still actively doing development work in areas that he really cared about, in addition to like running and managing the company. On occasion, he would get to dig into something really algorithmic, and so and that was his background. So we had a lot in common. It helped that he was just like a cool dude. Um, I for that particular CEO, um, I wasn't I wasn't I was like I cleaned up my act a little bit. Like I was a little bit more professional than I might have been just shooting the shit with buddies at my same level. But I tried to give him the honest me, like maybe slightly varnished, like a little bit of polish, but not too much because I figured if it was going to be a sustainable relationship and we're both going to get value from it, it would be inauthentic to me to try to pretend to be somebody else. And like any insights that I had were going to come because I actually thought about them and cared about them and grappled with them, and those were going to be things that were more authentic to me. So um, I also, like I tried to get to know him and what he was interested in. So like I definitely let him lead a lot of the conversations. But as we got to know each other and got some trust, then I would lead a little bit more and I would be more willing to share with him.
Okay. Interesting.
I do feel so. Let's say that you're not that anyone did this for me, but for me as a manager, like if as a manager, if I was going to be sending one of my reports to go meet with even their skip level, let alone like skip to the power of more than one level, I would want to do some prep work with them because it's gonna like I'd want them to succeed, but also it's gonna reflect on me.
How do you prepare someone for that?
Well, that's a great question. I
Thank
don't.
you.
We could dig into that, but what I think you don't do is say, "Hey, buddy, you're going to be meeting with your great grand boss. Good luck."
Yeah. What I we had skip level reviews for my whole team, and what I told him was like, he's your our CTO is a very direct and honest person who cares about the people who work here and wants to do like what's best for you guys and the company. But also, he does not know you very well at all, so you should be very careful with what you say because, like most people in most companies, their loyalty is to their boss and their company ahead of you. So, like, if you tell him some information where he has to make a decision that's between what's best for you and what's best for the company, he's not going to choose you. So, just keep that in mind. Which like is kind of harsh, but it's important to like realize that because if unless you've got fuck you money, then you know it's important to keep in mind. And like there's a lot of people whose entire career nobody ever knows who they are or what they do, and they're protected by that. But you're kind of guiding the spotlight to you when you're meeting somebody higher up in an organization. So you could come across really poorly or really well, and yeah.
The I want to emphasize what's best for the company is an interesting phrase. That's another one of those phrases that when I heard it the first time, it changed me. Like I could see suddenly something I hadn't seen before. Where as at least I'll just speak from my experience. I won't be like you know how it is. I'll just say my own experience is uh, when I was a more junior technical whatever, like I was in like support or something. I've only been on the workforce like a couple of years at this point. I had like they'll watch out for us kind of a vibe, or like they would never do that kind of a thing because it would be like not not to the benefit of right me or the group, or we've been around for so long or whatever. But then not only do you realize that's not necessarily true, that's what layoffs are. You for example are surprised to hear someone got let go and you're like, oh my god, I thought how could they possibly? And it's like, if they don't align with what's best for the business, it would be irresponsible for them to keep that person on. It would be irresponsible not to lay off. Like they would be bad at their job if they didn't make that call. And so, what's best for the company was one, made it easier for me to, as a template, understand why decisions were being made that might seem harsh. And two, to put in my PowerPoints to bolster why a thing should happen the way I said, because it's what's best for the company. You know, one, it's a bit fudgy, and two, because I'm oriented in that way, I'm more likely to get what I believe to be correct. Like I'm aligned in a way where not only am I making this appeal, but by being facing that direction, it is probably correct. Like it is probably, in fact, aligned. You know, you're not being sneaky if you're just following the alignment. You know, you're not subverting anybody if you are indeed doing what's best for the company. So that was another really good phrase. I heard you say it. I was like, oh, that was another big one. Orienting. I'm always on the lookout for those orienting phrases. You know, even if you've heard someone speak before, often, you know, their happenstance choice of words really can illuminate what, you know, what's on their mind, and can illuminate like how they think about things and how things are thought about at that level too. Tell me what matters, best for the company. Go ahead, G. You had like a little.
So just on that note, a trick that I've used in job interviews, go check them out on LinkedIn, Google, and if they've got any, especially like higher level executives, if they've got some podcast or talk that they gave, go watch that and like look for the like they're going to be talking about stuff they're interested in, and they're probably going to use some particular turns of phrase that will help you understand how they think about the world. Maybe you can even use some of those.
Turns of phrase. Right. Right. Interesting.
Also, we had this from 48 Laws of Power, right? Never outshine the master. So you also, this is kind of tangential, but want to make sure you don't accidentally throw your boss under the bus if you're meeting with someone above him. Um,
Yes.
because, like, for example, we had a meeting not entirely long ago with a VP, and one of my directs was like, well, we just don't have anything to do. And that was not the correct word to say. It's not
Never,
even accurate
never.
to the description. But I was like, don't ever say that in front of anybody above me. Like, because like from the company's point of view, we're super busy all the time, which is still true. There's just an unevenness in the flow. So there's some periods of idleness while we wait on other things, which is totally normal. But like,
Oh.
yeah, he didn't actually mean we have nothing to do. He meant he didn't have anything to do on this particular hour of this particular day, not like there are no goals for us or anything. Um,
I
so
just
that's a prime example of don't do that.
this is another question I have. Okay, so in response to this, and then I'm going to segue. You know, it is funny how it's like, oh yeah, oh we don't have anything to do. Don't tell anyone that. Okay, but then also, like you were saying, there are periods of uneven demand, and flow, I think is the word you said. Um, that's a thing. Idle time in the flow of work minimizes lead time. You know, not, I mean, there's more than that, but like you need idle time in order to respond quickly. Like I've got a buddy who works at Microsoft. He used to be Sev A or Sev 1 or whatever response, and his job was to be available. Okay? He didn't do anything. He was not allowed to do anything. He was to sit at his computer and wait until a Sev A came in. So, bam! He could hop on it instantly. And that's the only way you would do it. You cannot have, you know, a resource, you know, off and then switch. It's not going to work. And so, one, that's interesting. And Sev A is the most extreme version of it. But you're going to have idle time if you want work to flow with low lead times. But two, why don't managers know that? Or do they know that? Why do I feel like
Some
I'm more learned of the concepts of flow and the goal than, well, I don't know about my current organization. I have worked in organizations in the past where like they seem to think that all the hands should always be busy all the time. But that doesn't make any sense because that's not conducive to the lead times you're interested in.
My theory is
What?
people don't read, and then also, what is it? Being a manager is the only job you get by being good at something else. is the expression I've always heard. Like, you're good at writing software. You know what? You should lead a team. Is not like a congruent thought, but it's what people do. So
I would add being an elected politician to that list, but yes.
yeah. Well, I mean, they're not good at anything, but
They're really good at one specific thing, spending the money.
oh,
I
anyway, my point was just there that like nobody spends, or very few people spend as much effort trying to figure out how like management and productivity and things work as much as they do like whatever they were good at that got them the management job. In my experience,
wasn't that the entire book, the Peter Principle, is that you wind up getting promoted into an orthogonal competence that is
yeah,
not like making widgets and directing widget making are absolutely not the same job.
yeah.
It's not a more advanced form of widget making. Now you're doing a completely unrelated role of people orchestration.
Yeah, and I've never quite understood it either because we don't have that same delusion in like other fields. Like no one's like, "Oh, you're such a good surgeon. You should run a hospital." I mean, like there are hospital management that come from being doctors, but like that's not a logical leap from, "Oh, you can do surgery well, so you can manage a building."
It's a lot more stark when you put it that way, especially like the physical building. Like, what does physical building administration have anything to do with surgery? Unless you have to be really careful.
Of course, then, the whole thing devolves into another criticism with how organizations work of like, well, you don't really need somebody who understands planes to run Boeing. So we just got, our best MBA to build planes that fall out of the sky or whatever. Like there's, it goes both ways. You do want people who know the thing, but also, I don't know, like my dad was in charge of, he worked in a nuclear missile unit during the Cold War, and he got there from doing generator school, and they were like, "Well, you need to know how the generator operates to launch the nuke, but it's easier to train someone who knows how to operate the generator how to operate the nuke than it is to train someone who knows how to operate the nuke how to operate the generator." So there's like a path. It's way easier to pick one person and train them in one direction than the other. So it's probably a related aspect.
And I'm not going to pretend like I know how to run all businesses. And I mean, the businesses that survive year after year are clearly effective. I mean, I maybe I'm also going to make an appeal to another book, the orbiting the hairball. Like the hairball is a functioning, profitable business. Like it works. Or was it the? Did either of you read The Art of Business Value that Alex plugged of several months ago? It was a short book. I just one thing I liked from that was that he was like, "Oh yeah, you've got all this criticism for the process, but like it's a profitable, margin heavy business. Like it's working. Like the rat's nest of enterprise architecture they've constructed, it's working. Like what are you even criticizing? Is that it's what unpleasant to work there? What does that even mean? I guess if you're getting yelled at, that's probably objectively unpleasant. But like oh, it could work better. What does that even mean? Is it even a fair criticism?
I think, at least in software, there may be, yeah, software engineers have a hard time with this. They're like, your code can be terrible and it can be like just tech debt all the way down, and it's still supporting a functioning business. And somebody else might have like this ideal, pristine architecture, and you know what? Like the business went belly up. It's not strongly correlated. I would say the code quality with how profitable a business is. And often software engineers will want to optimize their quality beyond the point that actually helps the business.
How do they know when to stop? I mean, how do you make that trade off?
The
And I guess
customer
that
tells you
I get the customer
over
tells you
processing.
by what, leaving and churning, or
Now they stopped doing that. Um, like so for performance, like we have a slow and poorly made app. I would say, like in a way that makes me want to refactor it, but our customers love it. So, and we get like maybe 1 in 100,000 people are like, "Why is this so slow?" because like customers aren't concerned with like how long your largest contentful paint is or whatever. Like they don't care. Um, and in fact, we found in some cases, like when you send a lot of messages or a really big message, it takes a long time, like, 30, 45 seconds or something. And we've gotten comments that that's reassuring. It feels like it's doing something. It's got like the TurboTax effect of like the fact that it's spinning there for a little while makes you feel like, oh man, it's really working.
Money
So
well
like you
spent.
can never really tell. And like, yeah, there's some tools we really want to refactor for an engineering, like makes us feel better. But truth be told, there's not very much business value in doing it.
This was what we read so many damn books in our book club. The Seven Powers, right? Like people hate SAP, but like they sure keep paying for it because it works. It is concretely effective. Did we run out of steam, guys? Got to figure out something for the next like 20 minutes.
Do you want to talk about those LLM questions?
Do you have an LLM question?
Oh, the ones. Did you want to focus on executives and companies, or did you want to? I have it.
Well, we can
I have
go.
it.
We can go in
I have,
any direction in general on this pod. It's a business safari. I'll remind you. We can, if we see something, we're allowed to go. We're allowed to go check it out. If you can
I
tie it back into the main theme, that's cute. But like, I don't know what you're
the
referring to. Is that what is that, the book club or
there's
the?
I sent you a set of questions about what can you what can you do with AI for building products? What situations work well? How does working with AI affect developers? Do you want to get into those kinds
Sure.
of questions?
Yeah, yeah. No, because as well. I mean, that's kind of what I'm dealing with too, anyway, right? And so if I'm going to be doing any kind of communicating, it is likely going to be in that vein, surely. So where do we start?
Why don't we start with because we're all technical on this call. Um, and we've done software engineering, and we've all managed software engineers, and some of us actively manage software engineers now. So, like, how has AI affected software development? Where have y'all seen it um, speed up development? What kind of uptake are you seeing among your peers or your reports?
My biggest frustration right now is the people who don't fully understand AI or statistics trying to shoehorn it into our product. Um, but
Oh, did you put those two stars in your product? And what are those? What does that button do?
no, like, so we had somebody pitch using AI to predict server load and like dynamically scale up and down AWS clusters with AI. And I was like, you can explain 78% of the variance by just time of day and day of week. So why would we not just do that? And they were like, yeah, but we could do better. And it's like, what does better even mean? Like, we don't even have the granularity to dial in the exact amount of compute we would need to hit that. Like, you're talking about the resolution between like 5 and 15 machines. Like, there's not a to the 1% precision, and even if there were, you wouldn't want it because you'd always want to over provision a little. And it falls on deaf ears. We're going to use AI just to make the world a better place.
That's the use of AI as a stand-in for just like magic, right? Like we're gonna
Yeah,
we'll have a magic oracle that does the right thing at all times.
yeah.
That's a
I
carpenter and God, what was the product? They're out there. You can do them for free. That's funny. Also, I wonder how much Levi's going to let me keep in this episode. So at my org, we're doing some in IDE, AI helper. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, so I won't. Don't need to. It's all the same kind of thing. We're not using the best one. But I'm not seeing a lot of dialogue around it creating a bunch of 10x, engineers yet. I'm not really using it 10x. I haven't even tried vibe coding, on a hobby project yet. All right. G, have you seen vibe coding?
What is that?
Okay, vibe coding, as far as I can tell. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong here, Levi. He's doing a lot of nodding. That's why I'm including him. But vibe coding is where you use uh, the edit my files for me mode of, for example, Cursor Composer. You tell it to realize some end state, and you just hit apply, and then you see if it did what you wanted, and you stage the git diff, and then you tell it to do another thing, and then you see if it worked, and then you bitch at it, and then you see if it worked, and then you stage it, and then once you're confident that it kind of did the scope you wanted, you commit it up. That's vibe coding, as far as I can tell. You
Oh,
can
yeah,
really get into the vibes by just sending it. There was a story of a guy that was like, "Oh no, Claude deleted my whole project." It's like, bro, you have not been revisioning your code for months. But no, vibe coding is asking AI to make the change, and then not even going in there and checking. Just does it have tests? Did it pass? Great. Vibe check. Send it. That's what it is. It's the vibe check at the end. That's vibe coding, and then you send it.
got it. Because my workflow with Cursor is a lot like that earlier part. I describe what I want in natural language, um, and then we iterate together. There's not a vibe check aspect of it. Like I actually am reading all of the code that it's giving me.
That's not vibe.
Okay, well,
Yeah, that's not vibe coding. No, vibe coding is that felt right. Send it. I
Yeah, I
think.
like
I think.
to. Yeah, I think you're right. I like to ask whichever AI and then read what it tells me, and then copy and paste based on the decision tree of does that make sense or not to me. But maybe I'm just old fashioned like that. Um, I will say, with regards to helping with work, so we've got a fair amount of people who are just anti AI because there are horses who are anti car basically. But and also it's made our we've had some people submit some PRs, people who are high up and don't write software anymore based on what AI told them, and then it's like, well, we have to fix your code now because you decided that a computer with no context understood things better than us. So just excuse us while we make two commits to fix your one commit. But I'm sure this is productive to somebody. However, I will say we have had weird. We have a lot of very large SQL queries lurking around in our data visualizations and stuff, and a lot of times they'll have not intuitive results, which we never inspect because who am I to know? But our customers will eventually find them and be like, "Hey, this should be X and it's Y," and like I had no intuition for what it should have been, so it just looked like the right number to me. And so then we're digging through the SQL and AI is really helpful for understanding what 1,000 lines of SQL does. And so I found a lot of use in being like, where is this error? And it'll be like, right there. And, that's invaluable. Because it's like, is that a 10x thing or is that I would have never figured it out in 100 years? So,
there are, I think it was Critter posted in general. There's a tweet while it was broken, that someone's like, "Yeah, I'm using Claude Code, and it's just a wood chipper for old bugs I couldn't fix." It just, you know, I was even joking with my buddy. I'm like, "How hard do you think it would be to pick up COBOL?" You know,
yeah, I mean, without
like
going
I
too
know how
much
to
into it,
I
like,
know how to
we
program.
had.
Like,
We had an issue where, due to the nature of not false and not true in various subselects and stuff, you could get into an edge case where you're comparing if null is equal to null, which it turns out is false in Postgres. And so, but we would have never realized that because it's like this subselect is used over here and it creates this view and this view is over here. And then, eventually you've selected, you know, if null is equal null and it just doesn't. And, who's to say? It's like I would have never caught that. If I knew that in some intellectual sphere, but I would have never traced what row went through which conditions and eventually got to that bug.
yeah, thank God for that. The way I'm using AI programming with work is I'll just demand extremely small functions from it. I'll be like, make something that does this, and then I'll put that in the lib. I'll be like, all right, now make me a, make me. I'll be like, I'm asking it for like a screwdriver. I'm like, boom, make me a screwdriver. Okay, boom. Now make me like a hammer. Okay, now go get me a box of nails. Okay, but I won't be like, go make the whole thing. I'll be like, give me that little bit, give me that little bit, give me that little bit. I haven't worked up the courage to go full vibe code at work yet.
Well, if you think about it from the perspective of like code review, if somebody dropped 1,000 line PR on you, you're not going to do a good job with that, right? Like like I kind of have that same mental framework when I'm working with the AI of like, okay, how much cognitive load can I actually review at a time? And like, let me work within that scope, understand it well, maybe run it, maybe test it before I move on to something else. You're
I
just
did have
you're asking for trouble when you're like as you're just generating reams of code.
Yeah, there's a bandwidth problem.
It's also it's funny like getting an intuitive sense of what AI is like really good at versus maybe so-so. Like um I was going through and upgrading some old dependencies, and that's one of those things that's like, all right, let me upgrade this dependency. Wow, that broke in spectacular and interesting ways. And in the past, before AI, I would really try to understand what was going on. And now I'm just like, here's the terminal output. Tell me what to do. And
I'm definitely in that mode too at times. Yep.
Well, you have to. You have to. There's an opportunity cost if you don't. I mean, at this point, like you're gonna have to start answering for not doing it. You don't have the luxury of not doing it because someone that will is going to be cheaper to pay than you, unless you have outcome oriented quality someone above you recognizes as the true value, in real
well,
terms.
and I'm not sure what things I need to refactor now that I upgraded this library, and what things are like, oh, that's actually fixed when you upgrade this other dependency. They fixed it in a newer version. I don't know the state and the release notes of every library we've ever used. Like, who could possibly entertain that level of knowledge?
Claude.
Yeah,
Um, I do
Devin.
want to I do want to play a little bit here in the last because I do have a hard stop at the half hour. Um, what do you guys think about using AI in management? I've got it in my mind that I could automate the tracking what's happening side of management using AI. Like like if I just you either show up in the Git activity log or you're fired, right? No, tell me why I'm wrong.
I
No?
we keep we keep going over all these different like workflow things, partially because my organization's kind of a mess, but the people keep trying to get rid of the actual difficult part. Like, for example, we were talking about this whole thing recently about staying on top of like PRs and like managing like what happens when your staging branch is like diverged too much. You've got different features being developed in dev and staging and hot fixes and all this, just untangling that mess. And people are like proposing all these like SaaS products and workflows and things. It's like, guys, this is just a skill issue. Just be better. That's the solution to this. Single piece flow, do as few extra things as possible. Don't push broken shit. That's the, and I realize that's the, eat better and work out answer, but like, it's way more simple than being like, well, we'll just pay $1 jillion to this AI company that's going to magically know how to solve all of our like 20 people working at once problem.
Did it work? Are they better?
We're trying to be better, but like it's a continual process. That's like, are you in shape now?
Well, but like, are you in more shape or like is it working?
We're getting there.
Okay.
Uh,
I mean directionally. I don't mean are you,
oh yeah, yeah, we're
full
directionally doing
on.
better. Well, I mean, because it's like people do the wall of confusion thing, right? They're like, well, I wrote some tests. They passed the tests I wrote. The AI robot machine and connected to GitHub thinks my PR is good, so couldn't possibly be wrong. What do you mean QA caught a bunch of bugs? Like, I don't know how you get people to care about whether it actually does the thing you want it to do versus just didn't break any tests you made up 30 minutes ago.
It sounds like QA solved that problem for you. No?
Yeah, wouldn't it be easier if the dev just understood what the stakeholder wanted and did that?
That sounds expensive. I don't know. Can you
Yeah.
afford people like that? Like, I don't, what's the total cost of ownership for what you're asking here? I don't know. I don't know.
I'm not managing now, so I'm not sure how much it would take off my management load. When I was last managing, I tried to use it for like writing performance reviews, and I wasn't successful there. Um, but mostly, I was like trying to have it take off the administrative load. I partially wasn't successful because I think the tools weren't advanced enough, and also the place where I worked, the information was in a bunch of different silos. So like I had to bring it all together. There was a lot of work, and for me as a manager, I wanted to deeply immerse myself in each of my reports. Like as I'm writing their performance review, to the point where I had a policy where I wouldn't write two people's report on the same day because I didn't want to be exhausted. I didn't want to have bleed over. And so like I I wasn't able to effectively bring AI to bear there. Probably could have done so for like, simplifying and adding clarity and conciseness to the final output.
I wrote a gigantic prompt that takes in our values rubric as a rag source, uh, and then you feed it all the notes you've taken about your report, and it generates a performance review based on
Mm-hmm.
behavior specification, and it works beautifully. And I don't know if anyone used it. They asked me for one.
Well, that sounds like it would work great. And
It
then you would
worked
be,
so good. I had Claude generate a bunch of notes of that I would have taken for an okay report and a great report, and then it was like, this one's okay and this one's great, and here's where this one can improve to meet our values. And I was like, that's fantastic.
well,
So
Probably could have also
this could
stuffed the
just
job description in there.
this could just be me, but so like I've had a lot of success with like frontier models like the chat GPTs and Claudes and that kind of thing. But in terms of like local models that are even remotely not gargantuan, um, I've been really unimpressed with what it did. And like, we have some proprietary data, so it's questionable whether we can upload it to any kind of cloud resource. So, for example, using DeepSeek or Llama or Phi or any sort of thing. I've tried all the big ones now with, a task that on the face of it should not be very complicated. Given this message, what is this message about? Summarize that in 5 words. Very inconsistent results. It doesn't even consistently return a string.
What?
Uh,
What?
yeah.
Well, hold on. I have a couple questions. How much VRAM are you working with?
3090. I've also tried it on the MacBook
You
Pro.
have a 3090. Okay, and what kind of quantization are you working with like 514?
Uh, it's like I don't know, but I'm using the 70 billion parameter models for the like Frontier and Llama, or for DeepSeek and Llama, because those are the
Oh,
biggest ones that will return a result in a reasonable time.
no, you're 70 Bs. You're gonna have to have like a Q2 with a 70 B on a 3090. You need to look at
But I've
Llama
used
Llama.
I've literally done every model Llama supports. I've
I've had
just
no
do
trouble
one at a
with
time.
the eight
Are you
Bs
doing
though.
100,000 of them?
100,000 what?
100,000 messages to classify?
Are you doing it in one prompt?
No, I have a script that like starts a new request each time. It's
Okay, well,
like,
I've been extremely impressed with Llama 8B uh, Q5, like at quantization 5, 5K,
I have to check that out. I don't know. Like,
summarizing my podcasts transcripts. I'm surprised to hear that it like can't even return a string. Like that does not sound correct to me. I don't know. I'd love to see it sometime without recording, because we don't need to show your like specific private
well,
sensitive
it
data. I do
it
want to
could
know
just be
about your experience.
For a certain amount of stuff, it works fine. Like if you just did like one or two, you'd be like, yeah, this works great. But when you load like, pull all of these and then return to CSV, and then you try to process the CSV, you're like, wow, the CSV won't load. Why is that? Wow, that's not the output I expected. And like there'll be, 50 out of like 10,000 that are just like not even remotely the correct thing.
Wow.
And uh, which is good for if I was doing it by hand. That's a way better outcome. But like if I'm relying on a cron job to process stuff and classify things, it's going to be just an error. So
You guys are on AWS, right? Why don't you use Bedrock?
I don't want to use Bedrock,
Dude, Bedrock is awesome.
but I don't want to set all that up. I would rather just run it on my MacBook and see if it
Make
works, and then
make
or run it
Claude
on my
set it up.
server. I don't. I'm gonna have to make a request, open a ticket with DevOps, and do all this other shit.
You do have to open a ticket. That's fair. That's fair. I have had to
And then I'm
do
gonna
no
have to
less. I have had to do
explain.
no less than 37 PRs to get this established in the enterprise. But it's
Oh
been
yeah, yeah.
fantastic, and I get access to all of everything first because I'm the one doing it. And they gave me a test it resource, and so I got 3.7 the day it came out.
We also have to, I'll have to figure out how much it's going to cost, which I can't possibly know, and how that's going to
It
impact the
costs almost
budget.
nothing.
And
Oh my god, it's so
yeah,
cheap. Um,
I don't believe you.
well, also AWS called me and they were like, "Hey, where's all your usage?" And I was like, "Oh, I use a sliding context window and spend almost nothing." And they're like, "What the fuck?" um, that good job, G. That did a great job of burning the remainder of my available time. Thank you both very much for being available. I was very curious about the first topic, and of course, I'm very passionate about the second. Um,
Send me a link to exactly which model to use, and because
okay,
I have everything set up where I just have to change
okay,
which string it pulls from Olama, and
yeah.
we'll see how good it is.
Oh, Llama. I was like, oh, I'll just send you Cloud 3.5 Sound at V2, lol. But yes, I'll send you an Olama link
Yeah.
later, guys. Don't
See
leave.
you.